It's old news already, but Transformers 5 has been announced. And as someone who finds himself not only as a robot enthusiast, but also a pop culture junkie when it comes to his favorite cinematic universe movies and comics, and finding myself in this happy medium where all three meet together, I found it about time I shared all of my opinions and news about this stuff with you. And you're not going anywhere. Too late, you clicked on the video, I own you. So the official title for Transformers 5 has been revealed to be The Last Night. And not a whole lot to go on, especially if you're in the TF community. No idea what that could be, no matter how deep you plume into the comics, going all the way back to Marvel. Don't think you're gonna find any reference to a Last Night. Plenty of references maybe to The Last Autobot. Now, there has been some wild speculation with some people that I hang out with that proved to be some pretty interesting theories. Optimus's photo that we got with the reveal for the title of the movie shows him having purple eyes. Now, if you know your lore as well as some of us do, you probably know that when you get purple eyes, you're probably infected with dark energon. So shout out to my fellow podcast co-host Chase Naiman for coming up with that one. Might prove to be that way they're actually going with that. He's always had blue eyes before, so this new development with these new peepers could actually be a clue. Now, more than likely through contractual obligations for another sequel, Mark Wahlberg finds himself back as the unfathomably named Cade Yeager. But in a surprising trip back to the well, it's Josh Duhamel who's returning as Lieutenant Colonel William Maddox. There is one final name to add to the cast that isn't really such a huge surprise, but it does contain a nugget of story with it. And that would be Nickelodeon 14-year-old star Isabella Moran, playing, oddly enough, a girl named Isabella. So the tidbit of a reveal turns out that Isabella is playing an orphan who somehow finds herself friends with another Transformer character. Just gonna take a wild roulette spin at this, but I'm guessing she's an orphan because of the Transformers. Like, you know, her parents were in Chicago, they got killed by massive buildings falling and Cybertron coming in really close proximity to Earth, and her parents ended up dead because of that. Maybe this pre-established Transformer, if he is at all, like befriends her and is like, oh, I'm so sorry about, you know, orphaning you and all that. Let's be friends. I know a guy out in Texas called Cade Yeager, coincidentally. I'm gonna put money on that theory. Really not a whole lot to go off of there either, but there is something interesting Josh Duhamel said about his character William Lennox being in El Mirage, California, which is outside of LA. El Mirage, if you remember, was the location they used to be Qatar in the first Transformers movie. So it looks like they actually are going back to the well, not only with characters, but some of the previously established locations. Now, far and away being just another sequel directed by Michael Bay, there is also the outside chance this could actually turn out to be very good because of something else of an interesting development. If you're uninitiated, then you don't know that Josh Duhamel's character of William Lennox is already a pre-established character in the G.I. Joe Transformers crossover comics as a Joe. Now granted, the character has only been exploited as far for the Easter egg value for those of you that really know your lore, and for on-screen presence for being the military PMC type guy. But now with this newly established writer's room for Hasbro, that could all change. We could really see the start of a G.I. Joe franchise within the Transformers universe, especially with some of these names they've recruited to be in this writer's room. Nicole Rigel has been recruited as one of the writers, and she is a former soldier who wrote a book called Soldier Girls. And speaking of Nicole's, because they always come in pairs, is Nicole Perlman, one of the writers on the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And while we're on the whole subject of pairs, let's mention Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley. They wrote the Vacation movie, but are going to be better well known for writing the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. Add to that yet a third writer who has experience building cinematic universes with Joe Robert Cole, who's writing the upcoming Black Panther movie. And yet still adding to that pedigree for this cinematic universe, because if you're going to start adapting the material that all of this is based on, let's add Michael Chabon, better known for Cavalier and Clay, and Brian K. Vaughan, also better known as the writer of the Saga series, currently ongoing, or better yet, Why the Last Man, an amazing series. But yet, still, if you're not familiar with the comics, he also did work on Lost. And then we have Jeff Pinker, a name I'm not really expecting a lot of you to be familiar with, because it's not so much about the man, but what he's done, being the guy who's adapted the Dark Tower series from the Stephen King books for HBO. Pinker could turn out to be the ace in the hole for this writer's room, because as someone who has to adapt the Dark Tower series, he has to find a way to create all this connective tissue around all these thematic elements Stephen King has put into his books. If he can do that for HBO in a series, imagine what he could do for the cinematic Hasbro universe. And then topping it all off are just some excellent writers to help balance out your fantasy and human elements. Geo Choker, who does the Ray Donovan series for Showtime, time. And then there's Lindsey Beer, who did the Wizard of Oz movie, the most recent one that had James Franco. So looking at this entire list of who's in this writer's room, you have people who are experienced in building cinematic universes, creating the connective tissue that holds it all together, making sure your characters are human, your soldier elements to make sure it's gritty, and your fantasy elements to make sure it's all colorful. So everything we've all come to expect from the Transformers universe is going to be encapsulated in this writer's room. So as my brethren would say, with a little energon and a lot of luck, hopefully these writers will have more power than Bay. I know that's a long shot considering this is the man who brings a certain je ne sais quoi flair to his movies. Before that flair blinds you, cuts you in half, lights you on fire, and destroys half of the North Seaboard, whatever. The world's gone after Bay's film. You know that. He's hurt people. He's really hurt people. Brain damage. I'm just saying, I hope these people bring more control to what they're trying to establish with this cinematic universe that they're trying to build. Because for the love of God, you cannot put that type of workload on Bay. You're going to get the Zack Snyder syndrome that you got with DC at the moment. But as they say in the Hollywood gang, keep your hopes up and your expectations low. You got anything to say? Let me know. Didn't mean to rhyme. Completely coincidental.